Okay, now let's get into the nuts and bolts of the fair tax. I've already told you that it would be a national retail sales tax, that you would pay a sales tax on every service and everything you buy to the federal government. Well, you're thinking, no, I don't want to pay a sales tax on top of what I'm paying for these things now. I'll end up paying more taxes. Wait a minute. The three gentlemen that started this research project, remember, I told you they said it had to be revenue neutral, that it had to raise the same amount of revenue for the federal government that is now raised with income, personal and business income taxes and payroll taxes and the rest of it. Well, guess what? They also were determined that it would be tax neutral for the people, that you would pay no more out of your pocket with a consumption tax to the federal government than you are currently paying with an income tax. Well, how in the world does that work? Yeah, you're getting your whole paycheck, but you're going to be paying a sales tax out of that paycheck when you buy things that you weren't paying before. So how does this work? Okay, now things maybe get just a little more complicated, so I'll try to explain. I introduce to you right now a person by the name of Dale W. Jorgensen. He was let's see if I can get this right, Samuel W. Morris University professor at Harvard University, teaching in the Department of Economics and the John F. Kennedy School of Government. There he was chairman of the Department of Economics from 1994 to 1997. Also membership American Philosophical Society, Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, U.S. National Academy of Sciences, President of the American Economic Association, Distinguished Fellow of the Association. Yeah, here I'm actually reading from notes because I wanted you to understand some of the juice, some of the credentials of the people that did the research on the fair tax for the three gentlemen from Houston. Jorgensen wrote a paper in 1963, Capital Theory and Investment Behavior, introduced the important features of the cost of capital employed in the subsequent literature. The guy knows his stuff. So did so many of the other researchers that put together the fair tax. So, in order to figure out how high the fair tax would have to be, what the fair tax rate would have to be, they needed to know on the price of virtually all categories of consumer goods, how much of the price of these consumer goods could be charged to the tax cost of everybody involved in bringing that consumer product to the marketplace. Now, I could make this very complicated indeed by perhaps using an automobile, for example. Plastics, rubber, metal, electronics, tires, frames, body parts, upholstery, leather. Every one of these elements of building a car has its own tax costs. But I can make it even more simple, maybe make it easier to understand by just thinking about a loaf of bread. What are the elements of a loaf of bread? Well, you have a farmer growing the wheat. Now that farmer has to buy seed, he has to purchase farm implements, fertilizer, he has to pay for labor on the farm to reap the wheat. These are just the initial cost of planting the seed, growing the wheat, harvesting the wheat, and getting ready to ship it off to a baker somewhere. And all of the elements of that initial step, the labor, the farm implements, the seed, the fertilizer, all of those, when acquired by the farmer, have tax consequences. Sales taxes on the farm implements, payroll taxes on the workers, taxes on the fertilizer and the seed and the insecticides and all of it. And then it has to be shipped off to be processed. Well, the farmer doesn't own his own truck. Somebody else is going to do that transport. And again, there's another businessman with a lot of tax consequences, federal tax consequences, built into his work. Then it gets to the processing plant. More employees with more payroll taxes, more implements with more sales taxes. Transported to a bakery, more ovens, more workers, more implements, more trucks. Finally, sent off to a grocery store, packaged. More employees, more sales taxes. You see how this just builds up? Every step of the way. Virtually everybody involved in getting that grain of wheat into, then out of the ground, and into a loaf of bread, and to a grocery store, and finally to your peanut butter jelly sandwich. Everything has a tax consequence. And all of those tax consequences would be eliminated with the fair tax. They would be gone. Now, what is the nature? How much are these tax consequences? Well, Dale Jorgensen and other people working on the fair tax, they conducted a study on the production cost of domestic goods and services, and they determined that these production costs were approximately 22%. On the average, 22% of the cost of every consumer item and every consumer services. And they said that the cost of these goods and services could decrease by about 22% on the average after these embedded tax costs are removed. 22%. So a toaster, to toast that bread, to make your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a $100 toaster would see its cost, its price to the consumer reduced by about 22%. In other words, it would now cost $78 instead of $100. Now, the embedded taxes for different goods and services are, in fact, different. I think in the study, the lowest embedded taxes would be for a simple belt. Grow the cow, kill the cow, take the leather, make a belt, put a buckle on it, drill some holes. Embedded taxes about 19%. For the building of a house, the taxes may get up into the embedded taxes into the rate of about 26%. But for the purposes of the fair tax and revenue neutrality, the sales tax rate that you pay for the loaf of bread, for the belt, whatever, at the point of purchase, new goods only, not used. You buy a used belt, no sales tax, no fair tax. Why? Because it's already been paid by somebody else, whoever bought it new. So the fair tax rate would be, as originally proposed, when Congressman John Linder introduced the first fair tax bill into the Congress of the United States in 1999. That's right, 18 years ago, that's how long this has been going on. The sales tax rate would be 23%, an inclusive tax rate of 23%. In other words, when you walked into a store and pulled that toaster, that $100 toaster off the shelf, took it to the cashier and gave that cashier a $100 bill for that toaster, $23 out of that $100 bill would be sent to the federal government as the fair tax, and the other $77 would be retained by the retailer.